No. Here we go. Here we go, boys and girls. It's me, Wayne Clinton, aka Mr. Big, with, of course, not only the best looking man in England today, probably in the EU, but probably the man that knows everything going on in the organized crime world, the drug world, everything else in the EU himself, Art Hostage. Good morning, sir. How you doing today?
I'm doing very well, Wayne, and looking forward to this conversation.
Outstanding. Thank you so much for coming on. So let's get the ball rolling with this one. Um, what's going on in England these days in the drug world and the different drug gangs? Is this bad
Well,
to be?
you've got a changing of the guard because the Kinahan Cartel, run by Daniel Kinahan, is being dismantled as we speak. And they are a global drugs cartel that source the drugs from South America. They export them to Europe and distribute them, and it's a multi-billion-dollar a year cartel. But what's happened, you see, is they've come to the attention of the US government because of their dealings within boxing and with corruption within the US. And so the US government agency of OFAC, which is the Office of Foreign Assets Control, have been investigating the Kinahan. So that's leaving a void in the European drugs market, which is being filled by different gangs, which is then in turn creating animosity and disputes where we're seeing innocent people are being shot dead. Because in the EU and the UK especially, Wayne, we are guns to us are an anathema. We are not used to having them, legally, illegally or anything like that. So shootings are a rare occurrence compared to the US.
Wow.
And what we've had as a cluster of murders in the city of Liverpool, okay, where we've seen an innocent man shot dead. We've seen an innocent girl shot dead. We've seen an innocent 9-year-old child shot dead. And now we've seen an innocent 53-year-old grandmother shot dead, caught up in the drug wars. It's absolutely crazy.
I mean, that's not even a day's worth of killing in Chicago. City of Milwaukee sometimes has that many dead. I mean, and we look at it just like it's no big thing. In England, this is shocking. You guys actively try to do something about it. That's huge. Thank you very much for caring about people so much. I
Well,
mean,
yeah, and I mean, I think in the US, when it comes to firearms, there's been a lot of desensitization. And as you quite rightly say, in Chicago, it's a war zone. I mean, 10, 20 people can get killed over a weekend, 30, 40. But in the UK, it's still a rare occurrence. There's more gang violence with things like machetes or knives or acid or things like that, then firearms is still quite rare. But in the city of Liverpool, in the northwest of England, on Merseyside and the Wirral, there's always been a lot of free access to firearms. And unfortunately, street level dealers who can be from age 12 years old, say to 18 years old, have got access to firearms. And one of the things is, and I don't mean this in any kind of facetious way, is but they are dreadful shots. They are
yeah.
so bad at shooting, they end up shooting innocent people. And there's cases of where they've even shot themselves, where they're not proficient with guns. Not that we should, that I agree with that in the UK, but in the US, there was a gang in Philadelphia. They were called the gang that couldn't shoot straight. The Philadelphia mob. There was a crew that couldn't. They kept shooting innocent people. Well, that's what's happening in the UK. And I mean, if you work out how many murders by firearms are in the UK, and to think that we've had 4 innocent people have been hit by the stray bullets of gang members, then it brings it home and puts it into perspective.
It's incredible. I mean, science would say that that's what drugs do is they create violence, right? And it's a sad thing to see. I mean, it's even worse when innocent people get killed. I mean, Chicago is so bad that they're shooting people in the interstate. I mean, you can't drive to Chicago on the freeways while having the risk of somebody taking a shot at you. It's insane. And in my opinion, for what it's worth, is the powers that be, the leadership, says, oh, let's go and open up a new park. That'll solve the problem. Or let's hire gang people not to kill each other. I want a new idea. How about putting them in jail?
Exactly. And also, there's a couple of things that I, obviously read about Chicago. There's a 12-year-old boy in Chicago that's got over 20 kills to his name. Now, that is a psychopath. That is
Yeah.
a young child. Okay. And also, there was an incident in Chicago where there were two gangs shooting at each other, and the police recovered over 100 spent bullet casings. But this is the worst thing. They described it as mutual combat.
Yes. Yes. I remember that one. I remember that one.
Honestly, come on. How can you even go? How could you describe that? For me as well, Wayne, I've been calling that the UK should regard organised criminals and drug dealers as domestic terrorists.
Yes.
And they should use anti-terror legislation and laws to fight organised crime and drug dealing. And that may go somewhere to, because what happens, we get shootings, everyone knows who did it. The police can only arrest them, hold them for 24 hours, maybe get an extension for 36 hours. Well, if you apply anti-terror legislation to gang members and drug dealers, you can then hold someone for 28 days for questioning, and there are other things. So I believe that in the UK and in Europe, they should treat organised crime and drug dealing as domestic terrorism, because to be honest, that actually is what it is. These neighbourhoods, the poor people, the majority of people are law-abiding, honest people, and they are frightened and they're prisoners in their own homes for fear of violence. And to me, it is domestic terrorism. I don't know what you think.
No, I 100% agree with you. To me, there's no excuse. In my opinion, it's similar to my opinion of this fat guy in Wisconsin, mind you. If you use a gun, you go to jail. You go to jail for, let's say, 10 years. You don't see daylight for that 10 years. You do not get out. You get 10 years permanently, right? And take it from there. That might slow them down. At least that person won't be out in the street with a gun. It's sad to say the guns are fueled by the money involved in drugs. There's a lot of money in drugs. If people want that money, so they'll kill someone. If they shoot someone else, so be it, right? But they want that money, and they need to be held accountable for those actions.
Exactly. And also the fact is as well, America has a problem as well, is that it's not legally held firearms, it's illegally held firearms. But also you're getting lots of people with these multiple shootings have a long history of mental illness or taking psychoactive drugs, which then can bring on this kind of psychosis. So, perhaps they should tighten up the laws on people who are on psychoactive drugs or suffer from mental illness. That doesn't affect the Second Amendment whatsoever. If you've got someone with a history of mental illness, they should not be allowed anywhere near a firearm.
Right. And most of the criminals out there aren't getting their firearms illegally. Joe Blow, the gang members in Chicago aren't getting their guns legally. The same thing, we know I did a show with the man who, I can't pronounce his last name, forgive me, but he's from Holland, right? He talked to me about how the gangs there have fully automatic weapons that they're sourcing at that time from Russia. The Russian mobsters were selling guns into the Netherlands, the gangsters there, right? Fully automatic weapons.
Yeah. And also as well, there is a Dutch organised criminal called Martin Mink Kok, K-O-K. He was arrested in Lebanon, and he was about to ship automatic weapons, but hang on, also rocket launchers. They discovered rocket launchers that were going to be used on the streets of Europe and maybe the UK. Come on. This is military grade weaponry.
Yeah.
And another thing which makes the situation worse, Wayne, in my opinion, is the militarization of the police. The militarization, giving the police military weapons, military equipment, and that in itself ratchets up the tension, and we're seeing it even in the UK. The militarization of law enforcement, is sending the wrong message, and so the criminals, they then ratchet it up as well.
I thought that the gang versus gang violence was driving the one hand of military weapons versus actions against the police.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, also, I mean, I understand the sentiment of fight fire with fire, but you keep ratcheting it up and turning the police force into a kind of RoboCop arm to the teeth. And then obviously we can get into the issue of recruiting into law enforcement,
Right.
the wrong kind of people, perhaps who are not that stable, or perhaps, you know, we've seen cases, you know, where police officers are not really suited to the job and they take extreme action. Not all of them, of course, but to be honest with you, you know, there are lots of things that we can do which would make the situation better rather than just making it worse.
I agree. I mean, the first step is to try to do something worse for these kids before they get involved with the gangs. I don't know what that might be. I know we've seen has a problem with gangs. The city we're seeing is a gang war with the city of Kenosha, where the gangs are joining back and forth to kill each other. Now, supposedly they're looking into trying to stop it, but God knows if they're doing any good or not. I mean, it's insane. But again, it's over about the white powder. They would have sold the shit. They would have sold the heroin. They would have sold the fentanyl. They would have sold the cocaine.
Yes.
You know, I mean,
and I mean, that's two things that thank goodness have not hit Europe and taken off in a big way. They're available in Europe, but they haven't taken off, and that is fentanyl and methamphetamine. And if ever they take off in Europe the way they've taken off in Asia and in the United States of America, then Europe has got a very, very big problem, because the violence and the anger that will come as a result of any mass distribution of methamphetamine and fentanyl is something I don't think Europe or the UK is ready for. It will be 10 times as worse.
It's incredible. I mean, it's absolutely, I can't describe to you the amount of violence that comes with it. I mean, we see that in the southern border of the United States and Mexico. We see hundreds of people die a year. We have cities in Mexico that lose thousands of people a year. And that slowly moves its way up north. You know, it's absolutely incredible what these drugs do. But again, we have to somehow, in my opinion, educate the youth to not get involved in drugs in the first place. But in many cases, the media presents it as being okay.
Yeah, I mean, now what it is there's mixed messages. Now, I think the United States of America is being very progressive in allowing the states to decriminalize marijuana because it takes away the black market. I don't agree that Class A drugs should be made legal.
Correct.
But I believe that the emphasis should be on treatment of people who are drug addicts rather than criminalizing people who have got a drug addiction. Okay,
Correct.
And then that way. And also, what you need to do is you need to give opportunities to poor neighbourhoods where they can have another route out of poverty. At the moment, it's either if they're very talented at sport or they get involved in the drug world or the gang world. And so if there was some kind of opportunity for small business loans, for scholarships and things like that, which could steer people away from gang life and perhaps even drug sales, those things. But again, it's investment in the communities that is needed. And without investment, I think, sadly, a lot of what we say, can never come to fruition.
Absolutely, you're correct. Here, speaking of, we're seeing in Milwaukee, we have another booming business, which I'm going to call poverty pimps. People who claim they want to work within these poor communities and do something for them, right? They get huge grants to do these acts, right? They buy fancy cars, get fancy houses. We don't see them do anything in the neighborhoods. We do see them going to the bank and cashing these checks, but we don't see action. But they're politically connected to the right people, so they get these grants. They're not held to account. This is as bad as a drug dealer sometimes because they're hurting their communities.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. And although it can be anecdotal evidence, there was the case in California where a certain person was doing this, and they discovered that she had a $3.5 million home and all of this carry on. There are people who do abuse the system. However, that shouldn't stop people trying to
Correct.
help. They should just tighten up on the regulations and the way that this money is distributed, rather than actually saying
Right.
it's not working, let's stop it all. Well, no, if it's broken, fix it. You don't have to stop it. That's right. That's what I think.
I think you're correct. I think fixing the problem, when these people are caught scamming the system, they too need to go to jail. To me, we need to enforce the laws on the books. It would go a long ways in stopping a lot of problems, but we don't want to do that for whatever reason. But getting back to the gangs in England, I understand that the gangs, the drug cartels in England and the EU are heavy in the sports, like they're promoting boxers. Is that correct?
Yes, and the Kinahan Cartel has infiltrated boxing on a global scale. They had opened a company called MTK, started as MGM, then MTK, and they had over 300 professional boxers on their books. And those boxers would be used as mules going around the world, flying to Dubai, right, picking up $1 million watch, flying it back to their home country, selling the watch, and it's a way of laundering money.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right.
I didn't think about that. Yeah.
Well, you can buy $1 million watch in Dubai for 40-50% off of its retail value. You could take it back to the US and sell it for 40 or 50% of its retail value on the second-hand market. So if you're buying $1 million Petite Philippe watch in Dubai for $400,000, you fly to the US and you can sell it to any watch dealer for $400,000. But if you came into the US with $400,000 in cash, they'd say, where is it? But if you're wearing a watch on your wrist, okay, it's easy to get through. And you multiply that by 300 boxers going around the world all over. Plus, Wayne, when boxers go into a country to fight, they're normally only in 2, 3, 4 days in the country. So the customs are not really checking. So they can smuggle drugs in, they can smuggle contraband, because you get a team coming in for a fight, say on a Saturday. They might fly in 3 days before, have the fight, and fly out the next day. So they're good. It's a bit like pop music bands or big rock bands.
Right, you're right. So if you're, say, a pawn dealer, and you notice that these people are coming in with these high-end watches and selling them to you, right? Might be a bad thing if you sit there and say, I'm not going to buy this stuff anymore because I don't know where it's coming from.
Well, but again, the dollar signs of profit normally.
We're on that.
Yeah, they normally, if a pawn, watch dealers, not necessarily pawn brokers, but maybe people who specialize in very high value second-hand watches. Those people will always buy them because they'll have all the paperwork. They were bought legitimately in Dubai. All the paperwork. It's just that what you do is you send the box and the paperwork through the post, an empty box and the paperwork. You wear the watch home. But on the way to Dubai, you wear a copy of that watch, which is worth $10 because it's a copy. So you fly into the country wearing a copy. You fly out of the country wearing an original.
Wow. I learned something today. Interesting. Because I have to go and send you a link to the articles. We had a well-known high-end jeweler murdered in Detroit. And they believe he was murdered because he was saying no to the wrong people.
Right. Okay. Yeah. But I mean, it's a trick. I mean, to be honest with you, we used to do the trick in the late 80s when we would go to Miami. We would fly over wearing a fake Rolex watch,
right?
Okay, and then we'd fly back wearing a real one, and so we would earn 30% on that, and that would pay our expenses. So it's not a new trick, but it's just been applied to money laundering as they tighten up the regulations on banking. There's ways of moving money around the world.
Well, there always be ways of moving money around the world. I'm unworthy to have this conversation with you because that's an idea I did not know about. And I got educated a big way this morning. Thank you so much. So what's the deal with the furry? I'm so bad with names this morning. Forgive me. There's a fighter, I think, in Ireland or England with the last name of Fury, and they won't let him in the United States because he's involved with drugs or something?
Yes, that's Daniel Kinahan. Daniel Kinahan, Christy Kinahan, and Christy Kinahan Sr., okay, have got a $5 million reward on their head from the DEA, FBI, and OFAC. Each one of them $5 million. Now, what's happened is the Americans don't normally get involved in the European drug trafficking cartel, but in 2019 in Philadelphia, they stopped a container ship and found 20 tons of cocaine on its way to Europe. But what has also been discovered, Wayne, subsequently, that 3 loads got through previously. So that is 60 tons of cocaine went through Philadelphia on the way to Europe. Now, obviously, sometimes some gets offloaded in Philadelphia because, it's come from South America. So that things like that. And also there is an ex-professional boxer called Goran Gorgic, who was arrested in Miami 2 weeks ago, and he's been charged in connection with that 20 tons of cocaine seizure. Well, part of the Irish Kinahan Cartel operating from Dubai, one of them is called Edin Gakanin, who is a Serbian, or it comes from the Balkans, because this is a super cartel. There was Daniel Kinahan, there was the Moroccan mafia, Ridwan Taghi. There was the Camorra boss, Rafael Imperiali. There was the Chilean El Rico, and there was Edin Gakanin. There's 5 different cartel bosses came together to create a super cartel, and that's why they could send loads of 20 tons of cocaine from South America via Philadelphia into Europe. I mean, that kind of amount is, it's unprecedented, isn't it? On a regular basis.
It's insane. Yes, it's a lot of weight. A lot of weight.
And also you got to remember as well, they've also started looking at the Australian market, because that's the most lucrative market in the world, Wayne. Whereas cocaine would cost, say, something like 30 euros, 40 euros a gram in Europe. In the US, maybe, I don't know, 60, $80 per gram in the US. In Australia and New Zealand, it costs $500, $600 for a gram of cocaine. So the profit margin in Australia and New Zealand is the highest in the world. That's why they like to try to get Class A drugs to Australia and New Zealand. Now, in Australia, the drugs world and the underworld is run by Hells Angels motorbike gangs, like the bikies, they call them. So they're like the Hells Angels you have in the US, the motorcyclists with all the kind of stuff, the Comancheros and other people. So that's the way it operates in Australia. But that's the most lucrative market. They get between 5 and 10 times the amount of profit in Australia than anywhere else.
Wow. That's incredible. That's a lot of money. A lot of money.
Yeah, well, they've saturated the US market, which has forced the price of drugs down. And so they're looking for new markets where they can maximize profits. In Europe and the UK and Ireland is still a bigger profit margin than the US, and that's why it's attractive. And also you got the Far East, the Middle East, and Australia. So I mean, it's all to do with bottom line. I mean, these cartels are run like corporations.
Right, they certainly are. Going back to this meeting of the 5 families, I think there were 5 people got together with that serial cartel. How active, in your opinion, is countries like the United States coming after them?
Well, this is a unique situation where the United States government is going full force after a European drugs cartel based in the Middle East, which serves the European, UK, Ireland drugs market. And so this one is unique in that respect. Yeah, what you have is 5 different cartel leaders get together, pool their resources and buy such huge amounts. I mean, this Christy Kinahan was trying to buy $8 million worth of Egyptian military jets. They were flying drugs all over Africa in air ambulances during the pandemic because they weren't being stopped. They were moving tons of cocaine all over. They were renting air ambulances and pretending that they were taking people for operations and that, but they were moving tons of drugs. So this operation is a huge operation. Christy Kinahan bought his own container ships, you see.
Wow.
So, you know, it's a huge global operation.
Yes,
And also the South American connections and even the Mexican drug gangs like to deal outside the United States because it takes the heat off of them from the US authorities. So you can have a cartel serving lots of drugs to Europe, UK, going on to Australia, earning huge amounts of money, but not drawing the attention of the US because their dealings with the US is minimal. And that's why, and that's how he has got so big. You know, Al Mencho, at the moment, Al Mencho in Mexico is by far the biggest drug syndicate, and they're growing all the time. But they're branching out and with their dealings with Europe, with the UK, with, you know, the Kinahans, other cartels, Russians, you see. And that's how El Mencho has taken a lead on the other Mexican cartels who are still focusing primarily on the United States of American market.
and so the Kenyans, they're in a country where they can't be extradited from.
They're in Dubai, the United Arab Emirates. Now, unfortunately, there is warrants out that they do want to arrest them, but they're being protected somewhat by MI6 because they've been long-standing assets. The father, Christy Kinahan Sr., he's in fact got a British passport and was born on the UK mainland, and he's been an MI6 asset for decades now. What happened in the UAE? We had the MI. This is official. It's public. The MI6 station chief in the UAE was a man called Will Tricks. Will Tricks, that's his name. WILLTRICKS. When he retired from MI6, he became the closest advisor to the current president of the UAE, right, MBZ. So that's how deep this goes. And the Kinahans are being given protection from the UAE, and also because they're MI6 assets. Now, security services don't like to give up their assets. But what's been going on, Wayne, we all suspect that behind the scenes, the Kinahans are giving up a lot of other cartels, a lot of drug routes, and they're negotiating their way through all of this by giving up other people. It's almost like a trade-off. It's almost like a controlled demolition, because if you look in the last 18 months on a global scale, the amount of arrests there have been, the amount of drug routes shut down, the amount of successes that authorities have had is unprecedented.
Sure. So they made a deal with the devil. The government made a deal with the devil.
Yeah, to a certain extent, but with the publicity, at some stage, it's, you know, they're going to have to be arrested, or, as I predict, the Christy Kinahan Sr., the father, he's over 60. I think he may slip the noose, and I think the sons, Daniel Kinahan and Christopher Kinahan Jr., I think they will be arrested, and I think they'll be extradited to the US, and they'll have a choice. They either cooperate or they're going to get 50 years in Supermax. That's what I think.
Yeah, they won't like Supermax. They will not like Supermax at all.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the latest one. Yeah, Tony Gilmartin is, you know, that's breaking news that Daniel Kinahan allegedly is in Qatar, where the World Cup soccer tournament starts this weekend.
Right, and you think it'd be easy if he's at the World Cup to send people over there to pick him up. Maybe not with the permission of that government, but, you know, take him anyway. Put him in an airplane, bring him back.
Exactly, Wayne, and that's what none of us can understand, is this is like a slow motion car crash. I mean, they announced the sanctions against the Kinahans in April, the FBI, DEA and OFAC, okay, and we're now 9 months later or 7 months later, and they still haven't been taken into custody. They know their location. That's why I believe they're sitting down in a boardroom with MI6, with the handlers, and they're directing them all over the world to do stuff. So when they do go into custody, they can maybe get a deal or something like that. That's what, you know, because I've never seen in history When have you ever seen in history when the US issues millions of dollars reward, sanctions, wants to arrest people, and they know exactly their location in the world, and 7 months later they're still sitting there? Well, it don't happen, does it?
Well, it does, but that's a subject that we can discuss off air. Sad to say, and sadly it happens because there's wheels within wheels, and the government likes their informants a lot, as you said yourself.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And
We've seen that, haven't we? We've seen that with Mayo. He's only just been arrested in Mexico. You know, the murderer of Cami,
right, the agent, right?
Yeah,
right.
Is it Mayo? His name, isn't it Mayo?
I can't pronounce it my best day, but I know what you mean.
Quintero, right. Isn't it?
Yeah, Q. But yeah, I mean, and they know they knew the general area he was in. They only picked him up recently. Will he ever make it to the United States? I had a guy on my show thinking that so much because he knows way too much.
Yeah, and also don't forget they extradited him finally from Colombia this year, Otinel, didn't they?
Yes, Otinel. They got a bunch of people. They got a bunch of people out of Colombia. They got a bunch of people out of Mexico. Then they get indicted. They get brought back here and they go to jail forever.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another thing, you see, which indicates that, you know, they've got so many huge drug cartel bosses have been arrested in the last 18 months. But there's another case that I'd like you to go and have a look at. I've been reading it. It's fascinating. It's about a Colombian called Mimo Fantasmo, okay, who's connected to the vice president of Colombia. He's been involved in the narco. He's been involved in paramilitaries and everything for 3 decades. They finally thought they got him, but he's now been released from jail on bail, ready for his trial. Go and have a look him up. Mimo Fantasmo. Unbelievable story. And he's very close to the current vice president of Colombia. So, you know, we know yourself, the higher up you go or know people, the much more cover that you're going to get.
Well, absolutely. And the Colombia made a deal with the devil in order to put down the earlier cartels. You know, they went with paramilitary. They wouldn't let undercover killings in order to, quote, save their country. You know, they have to live with those facts.
But that is the thing, you see, though. But the problem is that all you're doing is replacing one cartel with another cartel.
Absolutely. You're replacing one devil with another. They don't get much better.
And the latest election in Colombia, the new president, hasn't the new president almost said that he wants to decriminalize cocaine or something like that?
Something like that. He said a lot of interesting things. He's a Marxist. He's a hardcore Marxist. We'll see how that works out for him in the long run. We had problems in Brazil. I've been told by people who should know that they expect to have him indicted and not put in jail within a year of him being sworn in as president, because not only is he, too, is a hardcore Marxist, he's also shady as all get out. And that stuff will catch up to him.
Where is that? Do you say Brazil?
Yes, sir, Brazil.
You're talking about Lula?
Yes.
All right. And what, not Bolsonaro? He lost, didn't he, Bolsonaro?
He lost, too. Yes, he lost. Bolsonaro lost.
Right, okay.
He lost to a guy with hardcore connections with the old South Colombian cartel. I think he used to be a guerrilla. Don't quote me on that.
What, Lula?
Right, the guy in Colombia. It's all mixed up. I mean, you get underground this, underground that to come to the surface.
Yeah, but then again, though, every now and again, though, Wayne, a story jumps out at you and breaks your heart. Do you remember earlier this year when the Paraguayan prosecutor was on his honeymoon with his wife, and she announced to him that she was pregnant in the morning, and he got murdered at the lunchtime? The men on jet skis. He's the Paraguayan. The Paraguayan prosecutor. He was on his honeymoon. In the morning, his wife said that I'm pregnant with their child. In the afternoon, 2 men on jet skis pulled up and shot him dead in front of his wife. And he was a Paraguayan prosecutor. I mean, that broke my heart when I heard that story.
Yeah, sad things happen like that all the time. I mean, it's tragic stuff. It goes on all the times. Basically, some guy in a fancy office building can snort some cocaine over lunch, or somebody at home can shoot themselves up to the knee.
Yeah.
You know, to me, Americans' love for drugs is murdering people in Mexico and around the world.
Yeah, but the American market is just so saturated with drugs and everything like that now. It's something that even people who were quite puritanical have conceded that marijuana has to be decriminalized to take it away from the underworld. And I think in many respects, if they was to take the same viewpoint in Europe and decriminalize marijuana, I believe that would cut off a lot of funding for organized crime. It would get rid of a lot of the problems and violence. So, there is a way. I'm not saying you should legalize all drugs, not by any stretch of the imagination. But I think with marijuana, I think the model that the Americans are following, I think actually is the way forward.
I agree. I mean, to me, marijuana is no worse than alcohol. No worse than alcohol.
Exactly. I mean, how many times have you ever heard someone who's been smoking marijuana wants to hit someone with a bottle? But how many times someone who's drunk and very aggressive wants to hit someone? So, you can go into the emergency room on a Saturday evening and see people there with cuts and all that. And they say, yes, I was in a bar and someone was drunk and hit me with a glass. But you never hear someone saying, I was smoking marijuana and this man was smoking marijuana and all of a sudden he hit me with a broken bottle. Well, that don't happen because all people want to do when they smoke marijuana is order pizza.
Sure. Order pizza, snack food,
exactly.
Snack food, watch bad movies. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, years ago, when I was a lot younger, I'm 58 now, but when I was a lot younger, of course, I, dabbled with recreational drugs. That's no secret. I don't do any of it now, but I recognize the hypocrisy and stupidity, right, of making marijuana illegal, because all you're doing is creating a black market and the violence that is associated with it.
Absolutely. You even go back in time to prohibition, we can see what happens when you create
exactly. Yeah, prohibition in any walk of life does not work because it creates a market, and it also creates a black market, an illicit market. Of course, it doesn't work. And I think everyone knows that. And the problem is that, we had people in power at the time, like Randolph Hearst, who produced ridiculous movies like, what was it, Reefer Madness and things like that. I mean, honestly, have you ever met anyone who smoked a marijuana reefer and has gone crazy in a psychotic episode? Of course not. I mean, of course, it's like anyone. Some people who may be suffering from certain mental illnesses, they shouldn't smoke marijuana. But it's the same as people who suffer those things. They shouldn't really drink whiskey, or they shouldn't, loads of things. And if, it's like saying we shouldn't drive cars because some people have accidents and get killed. Well, we still drive cars, but we try to do it in the best way that we possibly can. Right. And as I say, that's why I don't believe in prohibition.
That's two of us. I don't believe in it either. I believe in education. I believe in that sort of thing without a doubt. I believe in recovery, because God knows I'm an alcoholic, and I do. It's a everyday struggle. I get that struggle, right? And help out those resources to help me, right? You have to have those resources to help other people who want to get better. Absolutely, without a doubt. But prohibition does not solve anything.
No, it doesn't. I mean, I don't drink alcohol and haven't drunk for 22 years. No reason other than I went to university 22 years ago and wanted a clear head to study at that level. 1 year became 2, 3, 4, and now 22 years later, I still don't drink alcohol. But there's no reason behind it other than that I just don't think I need it. So I don't take drugs, I don't drink alcohol, but I don't pontificate or try to convince other people don't. Everyone each to their own. Everything in moderation's okay, I think.
I think you're correct, sir. I do indeed think you're correct. Again, as long as you don't hurt yourself or others, go for it, is what I believe.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's the problem. And also, you got to remember there is that kind of factor when things are illegal or they're not allowed. It makes it more tempting, especially for young people. You mustn't do this. When I was a kid at school, we'd hide behind the bike shed and smoke cigarettes. Nowadays, kids, smoke marijuana or take drugs. So, if marijuana was decriminalized, a lot of the allure of it, especially with young people, would go away.
Yes, they would go away. Right. They wouldn't care.
Exactly. Right? You're making it an issue when really it shouldn't be an issue.
So going back to our good friends, the Kinahans, hope I pronounced their name correctly, probably did that. So then there's sanctions. So we can see where they are. We can identify their property. The government will take it. Do I understand that correctly?
Yeah, well, what they've done is they've frozen their assets around the world, but they've got a lot of money in cryptocurrency. They've got a lot of money in other things dotted around the world. I mean, their business for the last decade, Wayne, has been minimum of $1 billion a year. It could even be $2, $3, $4 billion a year. So you're talking about the kind of money that they would have is something that we can't even, understand. I mean, I remember, back in the day when Pablo Escobar had $1 or $2 billion, and that was, considered to be an incredible fortune. Nowadays, I mean, there's the methamphetamine dealer from Canada called C.G. Lop. He's currently being held in Amsterdam, and the Australians want to extradite him. His business was doing $27 billion a year of methamphetamine in Asia. That's the kind of money we're talking about. C.G. Lop went to the casinos in Macau, and one evening of gambling, he lost $80 million. $80 million he lost gambling one night in Macau. I mean, that is the kind of money you're talking about. C.G. Lop. So all these big Mexican cartels think they're this, that, and the other. C.G. Lop in 4 years turned over $50 billion worth of methamphetamine with the Chinese triads and Broken Tooth. He's one of them. And they're now trying to get him to Australia to face trial. He's being held in the Netherlands. But, so you get this into perspective. The kind of money, I mean, we can't even imagine that kind of money, 10 billion, billions and billions and billions. And it's not like a business that you have, like Tesla or Elon Musk, where you get it tied up in a business. This is cash coming through the door, of billions and billions every year. I mean, it's difficult to even imagine the kind of money we're talking.
It's incredible. I understand that Vancouver real estate market is so corrupted by different drug deals going on.
Yeah. That
most of the real estate sales now are held by drug dealers. So I find that really incredibly wild.
Yeah, exactly. And in Vancouver, on Vancouver Island, a little tiny wooden shack house can go for $2-3 million. Little rundown 2-bedroom little house can go for $2 or $3 million. That, anywhere else it would be worth $20, $50, $100,000. So I mean, yes, it's just all this kind of dirty money. Plus the fact that you've got a big Chinese community on Vancouver, and there's a lot of money that's being made in China that they try to get out of the country, and they invest there as well. It's like all over the world. It's the black money coming out of these countries like Russia, China, even India, and they want to find a home for it, and they look around the West at where they've got the least amount of regulations where they can park their money.
Right. And safe economies, that's not going to melt. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with China. The Chinese leadership is not dumb enough to know. I'm sorry, rephrase that. The Chinese leadership knows they need to get their money out of the country in case all hell breaks loose. They have a safe haven. Yeah, that's affecting real estate prices around the world.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we look back at 2008 in the financial crisis. It was actually the underworld and the money held offshore that helped prop up the system. There was $5 trillion of undeclared money was washed into the system in 2008 to save the banking system. And what happened was a lot of that money, they looked the other way and allowed it to enter the system. But then the thing is, they didn't want to leave the system afterwards. That's why we've seen all these multi-billionaires, Russian oligarchs, and all these people, right, come under so much scrutiny.
Right. I sent some interesting reporting out of London that talks about all the Russian oligarchs owning so many mansions in London. That's incredible.
Yeah, of course. because of the higher value of them. But with the sanctions now, you see what's happened over a period of time, Wayne, is you've got a lot of organised criminals have got their way into legitimate business to such an extent they need to flush the system. And so the dispute with Russia is an excuse now to go after all the illegal billionaire godfather oligarchs to get their money out of the system. The next thing, when we have a dispute with China, they'll start to try and push the Chinese money out of the system. You see, they're trying to get a lot of the illegal money out of the system because legitimate business cannot compete with criminal money. You can't because it doesn't cost anything to produce, you see. And it will bring the whole system down if something is not done about it.
Right, yeah. I mean, legitimate money cannot compete against dark funds. No doubt about that. And that's how wars start, too, is because the economy's going to collapse. Mom and dad, shop owner don't understand why they're going out of business because this is going on. Yeah, governments react, and then we have wars.
Right? Yeah, and what you got to remember as well, actually, if you look below the surface, the Russia-Ukraine dispute is really Russian oligarch billionaire gangsters are fighting against Ukrainian oligarch billionaire gangsters like Molenevsky, who are the ones who funded Zelensky. And then what people don't understand, that you've got the West provoking it with Barbara Nuland and Robert Kagan at the State Department, who have been interfering in Ukraine for over a decade. She's the one, Barbara Nuland, who said in the famous phone call, she said, F the EU. She actually said the word. Do you remember that phone call Barbara Nuland said about the EU? No. Yeah, well, she was, because the EU were complaining that that the State Department was investing billions of dollars in Ukraine in 2012 and encouraging the uprising. Okay, and so the EU were complaining that it was causing problems, and Barbara Nuland said, "F the EU."
Well, okay, I can see that. What's interesting too is how the EU has not done themselves any favors by quitting producing their own oil and gas and relying on the Russians to give that to them.
Yeah, that is to be honest with you, again, it's internal politics, and it's used for, I mean, to be honest with you, Wayne, there's no reason why energy should be as expensive as it is now, and there's also no reason why the supply chain should have been affected and inflation's doing what it is. It's almost like a self-inflicted wound that's being created. Okay, problem, reaction, solution. They create the problem. Everyone reacts by going, oh my God, we're going to go into a recession. And then they offer you the solution, which is what they wanted in the first place.
Right. This is so true. I mean, how is it that we have, I'm sorry, I'll come off my soapbox. I was going to talk about our president, but I'm not going to go there. I apologize for even thinking about going there. Yeah, it's a situation that we have to, as the public, have to be more aware of. That's why it's important that we talk to people, that we have people like you on the show so we can get educated in what's going on in the world. We can start paying better attention to it so we can communicate with our elected officials and say, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, and the problem is, though, is you see, is that the officials, that whilst they may be elected at the ballot box, they are chosen to be the ones whose name is on the ballot paper. And that's where the big problem is. Okay, within the Democratic Party, okay, the actual party, right, did not want Hillary Clinton in 2016 and certainly didn't want Joe Biden in 2020. Okay, that was the rank and file grassroots of the Democratic Party. But Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton were imposed on the Democratic Party, right? Discounting any of the opinion, and in some respects, the same has happened on the Republican side. So whilst people get a vote on the day, that's not the problem. The problem is the names who are on the ballot. That, you know, if they had a fair contest within the party, you would have seen candidates like Tulsi Gabbard come to the fore, or Bernie Sanders come to the fore. On the other side, on the Republicans, you would have seen, you know, Rick DeSantis, other people come to the fore. But no, you see, the party apparatus, okay, and the party machine, okay, imposes their selected candidates, okay, which that is where I believe the problem lies. You need to go back to the grassroots and actually get the candidates who the actual party people on the ground level want, rather than who's imposed from the top.
Absolutely. I have a question for you.
Go on.
I see the picture of you on the car, right? Who's supposed to be in the car? Where's that picture from?
That's outside my home where I am now. It's on the beach. I live on the beach, and that's
okay.
So if you come out my back door on the beach, you can see you can see the beach. You can see the beach. Hello there. Good afternoon. Good morning.
Yeah,
morning.
That's the wife.
Yeah, and you can see it's on the beach. Now, I sold the car a couple of years ago, Wayne, because I never used to drive it. One year I drove about 100 miles in the whole year, and it cost me about $5,000 with insurance and all that. And I thought, well, it's just a waste. But no, that view you can see is what I see out of my bedroom window.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. That's a nice view.
Yeah,
That's
beautiful
nice
beach and sand and all that carry on. Lovely. It's lovely to live on the beach.
Yes, it would be. Yes, it would be. Very much so. I appreciate knowing that now, because it was bothering me about that picture. Where was that from? Thank you for explaining that to me. So, in your opinion, will we see the Kinahans brought back to England anytime soon?
Well, I don't think they're going to go. They certainly won't go to England. And the Irish have said that the Irish government has said that they will step aside. So I believe that if they're arrested and extradited from the UAE, it'll be straight to the United States of America.
Oh, wow.
But first of all, they will be arrested in Dubai or in the UAE. Then there'll be an extradition hearing, and that may take 6 months or something to get that signed off. And so a lot could happen. I mean, to be honest with you, it's up in the air. I've never known a situation like this where authorities want people, know where they are, okay, and nothing happens. But at the same time, there are huge, great big raids and people arrested all around the world.
Yeah.
It looks too suspicious to me, or maybe I've just too suspicious nature.
No, I think you're right. It's very suspicious. I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense. If they know where they are and you can see them in public, it'd be an easy thing to snatch them up, right? It'd be an easy thing. But they must not want them that badly.
Well, they've arrested one of the top godfathers, a man called Johnny Morrissey in Spain, and now he was running what's called the Hawala system, Wayne. Now, what this is, it's a way of getting money right round the world on trust basis. Now, what happens? Okay, if I want to give you $100,000, I give someone who's trusted in my country $100,000. Okay, someone in your country, right, gives you $100,000. And the way you do it is with a secret number between you and I. So there's a third party. So no money goes through the system. Someone comes to you, knocks on your door and gives you $100,000 and says that's come from our hostage. Okay, right? And then in my country, the money is paid through, you see, and it's called the Hawala system. Now, this Johnny Morrissey was laundering up to $1 million a day in the last 18 months.
Oh, wow.
Through this Hawala system. But the thing is, he was also dealing with terrorists as well. Hezbollah, Iran, Hamas, the Kinahan Cartel also, Wayne, they did hit contracts for the Iranian government on Iranian dissidents in the EU. They murdered them for money, so they work with the Iranian government as well. Yet another reason why the Americans want to take them down. And, you know, that they've got dealings with terrorists and all kinds of people.
We have a question in the chat from Tony, whose last name I cannot pronounce.
Gil Martin.
Yep, him. He says that they try to snatch the Kinahans in the UAE, would you think he'll end up in the shootout?
Do you know what? I mean, I wouldn't put it past him, but I really can't see it. I really hope it wouldn't happen. I would have thought, you know, we've seen other parts of the cartel, because all the other bosses, though, Wayne, have been arrested and extradited. Rafael Imperiali was arrested in Dubai, extradited to Italy. Ridwan Taghi was arrested in Dubai, extradited to Amsterdam in the Netherlands. El Rico was arrested and extradited. So there's only two really cartel members still free, Daniel Kinahan and Edin Gakanin. So, I mean, I would hope it wouldn't happen. I think they're living on the Palm in one of them $30 million homes. You know, the Palm where they've drained it all in the sea, and they've created all this. It's in the shape of a palm tree. Do you know where I mean?
I do. Question for you. Since we're running out of time quickly, which I'm sorry to say, where do we get a hold of you? Where do we find Art Hostage?
Well, yeah, we Art Hostage podcast. Art Hostage on YouTube. I'm Art Hostage on Twitter. Okay, and I'm updating things all the time. I do one, if not two lives, 5 days a week, and even on weekends when news breaks, I go live like we are now. So yes, Art Hostage on YouTube, Art Hostage on Twitter are the places that you can find me.
Do you have an email that we can send you messages at, or should you do so on Twitter? DM you.
Yeah. If you follow me on Twitter, you can send me a direct message. You don't even have to follow me. My emails or my direct messages are open. So anyone wants to contact me on Twitter, they can, and they don't even have to follow me.
Outstanding. Well, I do appreciate you coming on my show today. It means a lot to me that you were able to connect again. I love your YouTube channel. I'm very happy to be a member. The best $1.99 I've ever spent in my life.
Well, all I can say, Wayne, the honest truth is that you, my first opportunity to do my first ever live stream, and it cut my teeth on that. And as I say, I shall always be forever grateful for you showing faith in me.
Well, I'm the one that should be grateful to have a person with your background, your knowledge, your expertise to take the opportunity to talk to me in these shows. It means a lot to me, sir.
Oh, all the best anyway. Yeah, and we'll keep in contact, Wayne, because I'm sure that, you know, the things that we look at are going to overlap as we go forward.
Oh, without a doubt. There's things I need to look into. There's people I need to look into some more. This whole thing of FTX meltdown with that cryptocurrency and that exchange losing $10 billion of worth vanished. I think people are pretty upset about that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I wonder if
sorry, go on.
I wonder that any of that $10 billion belong to, say, shady people who doesn't like to lose their money.
No, exactly. And to be honest with you, there's nothing, nothing good comes of it. You know, at the end of the day, it's all to do with karma, and it always comes back to bite people, in whatever way, shape or form. And as long as you try to treat people the way that you expect to be treated yourself, the world will be a better place.
I agree. Well, I can assure you that I'm not going to start some type of a cryptocurrency fund. I'm not going to go and short my people. I'm not going to go and finance other people with other people's money. I'm not going to sell drugs anytime soon. I think I'm doing pretty good. Okay. With that, then, you have a great day, sir. I'll be seeing your live stream this in a couple of hours.
Okay, Wayne, lovely. And thank you, everyone. Thanks very much. And we speak again soon, Wayne. Bye-bye.
All right. Farewell. Bye, everybody.